2008 to order. Just a reminder, if you happen to have a cell phone or a pager, if you please turn that off. Our rule is if it goes off and we hear it, you buy donuts next go round, so that can get pretty expensive. Yeah, no more ties either. Yep. Also, if you wish to speak to any item on the agenda, we do have speaker request forms. They're over on the media table to your left, my right. If you could fill that out, put your name and the item number, so as we work our way down the agenda, we do not overlook you. First thing, as always, on the agenda is roll call and determination of the quorum. Amber, if you would, please.
Koiker?
Here.
Here. Kroger? Here. Costello? Here. Adcock? Here. LaCroix?
Here.
Martinson? Here. Weifenbach?
Here.
Okrepke?
Here.
Chapman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next thing on the agenda, as always, is our invocation. So if you could all please rise. Pastor Greg Robinson from First Assembly of God will be giving the invocation. And then please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Actually, I switched with Greg. I'm Jim Sorn from Bethel. So I'll try to do as well as Greg. Let's pray, should we? Oh, God, what a wonderful opportunity to put you first in this meeting and to ask you to bless this meeting, to give us wisdom, to give us guidance. God, we know that this time of the season we are so aware that you came in the incarnation to be right in the midst of humanity in order that you would lift us up to a new and higher place. God, you lift us up in our wisdom. You lift us up in the justice that you want for this earth. You lift us up in a love that is incredible. And so tonight we ask that you would lift every part of this meeting up in a way that gives glory to you, and that somehow, Lord, that the decisions that are made will be made in a way that will affect people in justice, mercy, and love. We ask this all in your name. Amen. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everyone. I know it's sort of a cold winter night out here. I guess we really do have winters in South Dakota. Next thing on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. If anyone wishes to add any additional items to the agenda, please turn your light on. I do have two things. I would like to add a 39A, which is a report on sales tax and revenue for the city. And then also under mayor's items, which would be item be 55A. I'd also like to talk about Halley Park. Any others? Please turn your light on. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you. I'd like to add an item under Alderman's comments concerning Will Collins.
Okay, so let's call that 56A. That's Will Collins. Okay, and let's see, also Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Just to thank you for our potluck tonight and wishing people Merry Christmas.
Okay, so let's call that 56B. Okay, and let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Topic on the Beautification Committee.
So we'll call that, how about 56C, please? Okay, any others? Seeing no further lights, the chair would look for a motion to approve as amended. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. And discussion on that motion. In discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Now we need to approve the minutes for the December 1st, 2008 special council meeting and the regular council meeting also on December 1st. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to awards and recognitions, and I'll go down front, and we'll be recognizing two Veterans of the Month, our November and our December. There we go. It really is always an honor to recognize veterans who defend our freedom. And in partnership with the Veterans Coordination Commission, we're pleased to present the November 2008 Veteran of the Month recognition to Brian Carnes. Brian entered the Air Force in 1994 after graduating from high school. He was medically retired as a tech sergeant with combat-related injuries in 2005 from the 320th Special Tactics Squadron and the 1-1, first of the first, okay, Special Forces Group. Brian supported operations in Bosnia and Kosovo and was also deployed in supported military operations throughout the Middle East. These operations included Operation Bright Star, Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and Operation Enduring Freedom Philippines. Brian comes from a heritage of proud military service to our country. His grandfather and his father were both retired from the Air Force. His sister served in the United States Army and served in Iraq in 2003. His brother is in the U.S. Army and is stationed in Iraq currently. After retirement, Brian attended Penn State and received an undergraduate degree in 2007. He spent 4 months volunteering for the South Dakota Archaeological Research Center and is currently working on a graduate degree from Penn State. He volunteers with Friends of the Library, I know Greta probably appreciates that, and is strongly committed to connecting military and civilian communities. Congratulations and thank you for your service. Oh, there's some applause. Let's see, let's get some pictures here. Very good, thank you. There we go. You know, Brian, you probably make a good politician. You don't like saying much. Okay, next we also have a December Veteran of the Month. If Jim could come on up, please. Let me tell you just a little bit about Jim Savage. Well, first of all, let me read this. In partnership with the Veterans Coordination Commission, we are pleased to present the December 2008 Veteran of the Month recognition to James Jim Savage. Jim entered the United States Air Force in 1946, where he remained until his retirement as a Master Sergeant in August 1966. Jim's military career was spent flying in B-17s, B-25s, B-29s, B-50s, and B-52s, and boy, am I jealous. And his overall... Oh, B-36, albeit they didn't leave that. His overall career spanned 18 years as an airborne radio operator and also an ECM operator and gunner in these different aircrafts. He accumulated over 6,500 flying hours and received the Senior Enlisted Air Crew Wings with Wreath and Star. Jim's greatest accomplishment was being on a crew that was on a world record flight on June 6th and 7th, 1962, flying nonstop in a closed course for 11,303 miles without refueling. Jim is also very proud that he served Jim served in very many rewarding career flights, including 9 combat flights in the B-52. After his career in the United States Air Force, Jim attended and graduated from the University of Nebraska in 1967. He then worked for the FDCI as a federal bank examiner for 18 years, retiring in 1985. Jim has volunteered to drive the DAV van for over 4 years and volunteered 3,400 hours to the VA. 3,400, that's incredible. Thank you, Jim. He is dedicated to the military establishment in and through deeds and enthusiastically supports and participates in military affairs that affect the military community. He is married to Ellen Warner, his wife, for the past 4 years, and between them, they have 6 children and 13 grandkids. Boy, you've been busy buying presents, haven't you? Jim, congratulations, and thank you for your service to our country. Come on up, we'll get a picture of all of us. Nice start.
I really don't have much to say. I'm thrilled that TRIA, our TRIA chapter, nominated me for this honor, and I'm very pleased to be here. And thank you for showing up, guys. And I once mentioned to my wife that it'd probably be a cold day in hell, and I ever got nominated for something like this. And I don't know about hell, but it sure is cold here.
Congratulations, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Chief, you want to go ahead and come up? We also have a recognition for a long-term employee. Loyanne, where are you at? There she is. Come on up. It's always a pleasure to recognize those folks that have been with the city for a number of years. She has been with us for 25 years, and I'm going to have the chief say just a few words.
Loyanne came to the police department in 1983, apparently at a very early age, where she worked as a records clerk for over 11 years. After that, she moved to the traffic section and worked there as a clerk for over 4 years. And at that point, she moved out to the street to a parking enforcement officer. But don't worry, she hasn't given anyone in this room a ticket for parking ever, except for probably except for Kevin. But so she's been there for 9 years. 9 years in parking enforcement. She's a great employee, great attitude, always has a smile on her face, and just a joy to be around. So thank you for 25 years.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda, as always, is the general public comment period. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at tonight's meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by the unanimous votes of the council members present. Do we have any speakers that would like to talk during the general public comment period? We do have a number of folks that want to talk about the tennis, and let's see. Any specific order that you guys want to go in? I'll tell you, why don't we do this? Why don't you go ahead and just come up, and if you'd introduce yourself. This must be Sophie Grace. Oh, let's get them right up here to the microphones. And if you could turn those mics down a little bit for them, if you would, please. Okay, there we go. Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Grace, and I'm 9, and I've played tennis since I'm 2.
Hi, my name is Sophia, and I played tennis since I was 4, and now I'm 12, so.
Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I've been playing tennis since I was 2.
And boy, are you cute. Very good. Thank you, ladies.
Hi, that's a tough act to follow. I'm Annie Bussler, and I represent a couple different groups, the Black Hills Tennis Association, and also I'm an assistant coach for girls tennis at Rhapsody Central. So I'm talking with regards to the Parkview Tennis Courts project, and I came before a group, I think, from the city a few years back when we applied for the 2012 funding, and we certainly are appreciative of the direction that it's heading, and we're very excited about it. From the Tennis Association's viewpoint, I think it will be an asset to the community. It will be an area to provide recreation and improve health for the people that live in that part of the community, and we foresee lots of recreation programs, leagues, tournaments, and such. And as far as from the tennis coach's point, we're also very excited because, as you know, Memorial Park has not always been the most, how should I say it, wholesome place or location for our kids to practice and to have matches. And so we're very excited about having a new facility. And thank you very much.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Lauren McDonald.
I'm Lauren, and
I'm Aisling.
We're from St. Thomas More, and as you know, St. Thomas More is really close to Parkview, and we've really never had like home courts of our own. So like we would like it would be really helpful for St. Thomas More just to be like drive down the street and have some tennis courts.
And even for recreational purposes, like I'll try and go to Wilson Park or something with my friends, but there's just two courts there and they're not in the best condition at all times, and so they're often filled up, so it's hard to get any use out of them. So having these new courts would be a great asset to our community, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. And we also have a speaker request form from Liz Hamburg. Oh, we can go to Tom. Go to Tom first.
Hi there. I'd just like to thank the City Council for letting us come talk to you guys tonight. I'm co-captain at Central. I've been playing for 6 years now. I've been playing at the Memorial Courts all 6 years. And we have to go there a lot, sweep off the courts. There's broken bottles. Some of the nets get torn down here and there. The bathrooms are in the greatest condition. But I think the courts down at Parkview would be a great asset to the community, not only for just St. Thomas More's use and Central's use, but also come state time, come GDC, we can make the tournaments flow a lot faster, everything can go a lot smoother. So I'd like to thank you guys one more time. So.
Thank you, Tom. Now, Liz. There again, Liz, if you just identify yourself for the record.
I'm Liz Hamburg. I'm a member of the U.S. Tennis Association Northern Section Board of Directors. And our USTA section, Tennis in the Parks Committee, has granted the Rapid City Parkview Public Courts Project $11,500  2008 money. We are encouraged to apply for this project again in 2009, and this grant application has been forwarded to the U.S. Tennis Association offices in New York for consideration for funding from the national office. The Black Hills Community Foundation has established a donor-advised fund which will match our local fundraising efforts up to $10,000. We currently have $9,000 raised. So these funds will be matched. The funds will be released when the project breaks ground. This brings our total fundraising to $30,500 towards this project.
Very good.
We have a wonderful recreation complex at Sioux Park, and we're anxious for the city to provide the same opportunities for our tennis lessons, leagues, and an open play to everyone on the east side of Rapid City as well. We want the city to know that we are working to help get this project off the ground, and we're excited about all the fun we'll have on those new courts. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate the update. And that is all the speaker request forms I have for the general public comment period. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. From there, we'll move forward to the non-public hearing items. This is items 3 through 57. And the chair would look for a motion to open the public comment periods for 3 through 39, please. 3 through 39.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to open the public comment on items 3 through 39. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We do not have any speaker request forms on items 3 through 39. I'll just make sure we ask one more time. Anybody from the public wish to speak on any of the items 3 through 39? Okay, seeing none. Chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar is items 3 through 39, and the chair would ask if anyone wishes to have any items 3 through 39 inclusive to be removed from the consent calendar. If so, please turn on your light. I do have item 12. Is that the one you wanted, Robert? Okay. Item 12. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Item 22, please.
Okay. Item 22. So far we have 12 and 22. Any others? 3 through 39 that we need to pull from the consent calendar, please. Seeing none, the chair would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar with the items 3 through 39 inclusive, with the exception of item 12 and 22, please.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar, items 3 through 39 inclusive, with the exception of item 12 and item 22. Any further discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item 12, and if we could have Alderman Kroger, who's the chair of Public Works, read that in for us, please.
Item number 12 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign an agreement between the city of Rapid City and Damon Reel and Janine Reel for the acquisition of a permanent drainage easement. I would move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Robert Ellis, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that on the agenda, the agreement that was linked had some incorrect property owner information. I know Joel has handed out a paper version with the corrected property owner address. Should be on the dais in the blue folders, and this would be the agreement that we'd ask for approval.
Joel, is that the correct statement?
Yes. The only change would be that it was changed from Janine Reel as one of the property owners to the estate of Jean Reel, and the signature blocks were changed. Otherwise, the agreement's the same.
Okay, very good. Let's go to the motion maker. Is that all right with the motion maker? Mr. Kroger, is that all right with the motion maker?
Yes.
And the seconder?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Everyone clear on the motion? We are voting for approval on item 12, and we're looking at the agreement that is provided on the dais, which is at the top identified as item 12, Public Works 12, 0908-04. Any further discussion on that motion? The motion is for approval. Seeing none, all's in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to item number 22, and Alderman Sam Quaker, who is our chair of our Legal and Finance, could you please read that in, please?
Item 22 is acknowledge the library board's authorization to use salary line item to pay for replacement and repairs, voice over internet protocol phone system, and planned facilities maintenance in the amount of $56,500. I yield to the floor.
Okay, very good. We have a motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like the record to reflect that I will be abstaining from this item because my employer is a dealer in VoIP phone systems.
Very good. We also state that. Any further discussion? The motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes with Alderman Quaker abstaining. Okay, that does take us to the end of the consent calendar, and that takes us to item 39A, which is a presentation as far as sales tax. I had a request from a number of council people wanting an update where we're sitting as far as financially, and so I'm going to go down in front and I'm just going to give a very quick PowerPoint, which passes down. Okay, now's the question if I can figure out how to work this thing. There we go. We had a request from a number of council people to give you an update as far as how we're looking as far as our different revenue sources. And I think it's important, especially in these times where you hear an awful lot of bad news in the national media, to give you an update what's happening in Rapid City and how it's affecting Rapid City. So with that, how is the national economy affecting Rapid City? Well, first of all, has the downturn in the stock market affected the city? Not directly, because of the fact that the city has all of its assets kept in either government-backed securities or bonds. So the stock market really has not affected city government to this point. How's the national economy impacted the employment in Rapid City? Well, I'm going to tell you, we're very fortunate because of the fact that according to the latest statistics in communities of 50,000 people or more, Rapid City has the third lowest unemployment rate in the nation at 2.5%. Sioux Falls, believe it or not, is 2.3. I think they just moved up to 2.4. Idaho Falls, Idaho was 2.4, and Rapid City is 2.5. We have the third lowest unemployment rate in the nation, so we're very lucky in that respect. Now, having said that, Even though our unemployment rate is 2.5, the one thing I think that as a city we need to remember is the fact that although we're at 2.5%, which is typically considered full employment, we still have some issues dealing with underemployment. In other words, we have some folks that are working below their skill levels, and so we need to continue working on that. Question is, how do we tell what's happening in our economy? Well, first, of course, we look at sales tax. We also look at the triple B tax, because the triple B will tell us how our tourism season is going. We can also look at the bid tax, or what I like to call the pillow tax. And then we can also look at building permits. So let's look at sales tax real quick. Now keep in mind the numbers that you're going to see are as of the end of October, and they're on the accrual basis. In other words, when they were earned. The cash basis is a little bit different, and they actually indicate a little bit stronger, but I want to make sure that we gave the most conservative numbers that we could possibly give. And so on the accrual basis, as far as sales tax, and I know I can't point up here, but for those in the audience, we saw to date in 2008, we're showing a 7.9% increase in sales tax. We projected a 3.5% increase for 2008. So we're more than double what our projection is. So we're up to this point sitting in very good shape. Now, I will tell you, we're keeping a close eye on that. Will the national economy affect our local economy? Eventually will, but so far it hasn't. Let's also look at the triple B tax. Now there again, this is through the end of October. And from 2007 to 2008, we're seeing a 6.12% increase. So we're having a pretty good year as far as tourism. Notice it isn't quite as high as the sales tax numbers, and I think the reason for that is we saw a little bit of a soft rally, and that's probably why that number is just a little bit soft. So that's our triple B. How's our bid or our pillow tax doing through the end of October? What's up about 2.61%, which is actually very good. The thing you have to remember is it isn't like a sales tax because you have a limited number of rooms, and so what you're doing is you're actually seeing increases in the number of occupancy, the occupancy rate. So we have a lot more rooms being rented that we have. So that's a great indication that we're bringing people in, they're spending the night. And the last is building permits. Now this is through the end of November. The reason we can project this through the end of November, these are numbers that we use internally. We track these numbers internally. The sales tax and whether it's the sales tax, the triple B or the bid, those all have to actually go through the state. So there's about a 2-month lag between when they're actually collected and when we get to report those. So what's happening with building permits? Well, they're down a little bit this year, but keep in mind, in 2007 was an absolutely incredible year because that's when we had Rushmore Crossing, that's when we had Cabela's. We had a lot of big projects come in, and it was about a 30% increase over the previous year. But as you can note right on the bottom, 2008 up to this point is the 3rd strongest year in Rapid City's history. So building is still going strong in Rapid City. So what does this mean for Rapid City? So far, Rapid City has weathered the downturn in the national economy very well. Will it affect us? Eventually it will, but to what extent, we're very hopeful that it will be small. And in anticipation, of course, Rapid City approved a conservative no-growth budget in 2009. A lot of that credit goes to the City Council. They did a tremendous job trying to make sure that we didn't increase the demand and the pressure on our taxpayers. And the best thing is we did all this without cutting any services. With that, I promise a very short slideshow, so there you go. Did anybody time it? Was it less than 5 minutes? Okay.
Jim had one. You can make a copy.
Thank you, everyone, for that latitude. And as you can see, Rapid City is very blessed in the fact that we have a good, strong local economy, but as always, we'll be diligent in tracking that and making sure that if we do start seeing a downturn, we'll be addressing that as it comes along. Sure. Let's go to Alderman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not familiar with the bid tax. If I could just get a quick explanation.
Sure,
of that.
absolutely. The bid tax is actually a business improvement district, and what it is a tax that we charge on motel rooms. It's $2 per night per room. It was passed about a year and a half ago. The state legislature changed the state statute to allow us to create a bid that is non-contiguous. Typically, a bid has to be within a certain district. With the change in state statute, we were allowed to actually have a non-contiguous bid, which included any hotel property, motel property with 50 beds or more, and they charged $2 per night, and that money is specifically directed to the CVB, our Convention and Visitor Bureau, for the promotion of convention business in Rapid City. Thank you for the question. Okay, very good. If not, we will go on. We're on to the non-consent calendar, items 40 through 57. Chair would look for a motion to open the public comment period, items 40 through 57, please.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I do not have any speaker request forms for items 40 through 57. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to any items 40 through 57 inclusive? Not. The chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to close the public comment period, items 40 through 57. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That does take us to the non-consent items, item number 40, and ordinance, Alderman Quaker, Legal and Finance. Could you please read that in, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 40 is second reading of ordinance 5443, an ordinance to provide for administrative approval of certain business licenses by amending various sections of Title V of the Municipal Code, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 41, please.
Item 41 is second reading of ordinance 5444, an ordinance to provide for criminal history records checks for certain business licenses by amending various sections of Title V of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion?
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple of questions. The first question is, been doing a little research on this relating to how this affects gem and mineral dealers and coin and antiquities dealers and shows. In talking to some folks who are experienced with this ordinance, and remember when it was originally put in place, it was put in place in the late 70s, early 80s when gold went up to $800 an ounce, and one of the reasons that it was put into place was to help protect citizens from having shows come into town and then having a rash of thefts where people would just go dump their items at the show, and then the out-of-state dealers would then leave town. It's my understanding that the ordinance has not, over the years, been thoroughly enforced, and I understand why, relating to shows. What I would like to do is I would like to make sure that if we proceed with passing this ordinance, that what is good for the local dealer is also good for the out-of-state dealer, and that may mean that we may need to come up with some sort of provisional licensing provision in order to not stop coin and gem shows. They bring a great deal of revenue into our community, and we don't want them to simply go to the next town. And so I would like to ask the city attorney his thoughts on this, and then I do have another question as well on this ordinance.
Okay, let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to meet with Chief Allender later this week to discuss this issue and another issue related to background checks. So there may be another recommendation to make further amendments to that licensing scheme. I would not recommend combining it with this particular ordinance. Let's get this one done, and if we need to make further amendments, we'll bring those recommendations through the normal process And you could probably look for that beginning the first Legal and Finance Committee meeting in January.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to Alderman Sam Quaker. Sir, you still have the floor.
And I appreciate the answer on that, Jason, and I think that that's a good solution. The other question I have is relating to provisions under this chapter for issuing licenses to anyone who's been convicted of a felony. It says on page 2, okay, 5.40.020, it says, no license under this chapter shall be issued to any person who has been convicted of a felony. Now, I would urge us to be careful here because I do believe that there have been business licenses issued in the past to people that have felonies on their record, and I think it really depends on the situation and also depends on how old it is. So the way I read this ordinance, it's basically saying if you've ever had a felony of any type, no matter what it is and no matter how long ago it was, you cannot have a business license. I don't think that that's the intent of the ordinance, and I would like to ask the police chief or city attorney to comment on that.
Jason, did you want to comment, or did you understand the question?
I do understand the question. Chapter 5.52 deals with security guards, and I suspect that the original intent in enacting that was to prevent anyone who had been convicted of a felony from obtaining a business license. Whether or not that's a good public policy or not is something for the council to debate. I would suggest that from a legal standpoint, you're probably better off making that very clean rule that no felon can have this particular license. But ultimately, that's your decision, and the chief of police may have other thoughts.
Okay. Chief, did you have anything to add? Okay, very good. Alderman Quaker, still have the floor, sir.
Well, I'm a little bit concerned about this because I was contacted by an individual, and I didn't ask him specifically if I'd mentioned his name at a public council meeting, but he does have an old felony on his record and as a dealer here in town, and I haven't discussed this particular sentence with him, this sentence in this chapter, but it appears in this reading that if we pass this ordinance as is, in spite of the fact that he's been in good standing for many years, he will be done if this ordinance passes. And so I don't think that that's the intent of this ordinance, is to put an existing gem mineral or corn dealer out of business, especially if they've been in good standing. Could I have clarification on that?
Sure. Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you. The section of the code that was referenced deals with security guards and security licenses. The coin and gem dealers are in a different section. I don't believe that has the same disqualifier.
Okay. Alderman Quaker?
I'm referring, Jason, to 5.4.020, which is precious metals and gems. And so that's what I'm hoping that we can adjust the language a little bit to say that a felony won't necessarily prohibit a license from being issued, although it can be taken into consideration.
Let's go to Jason Green, city attorney.
The language that you're referring to is the current language in the ordinance. There's no proposal to change that. So what's shown there as not being bold and underlined is what's in the ordinance today. If you'd like to make changes, you could certainly do that.
Okay. Anything else?
Can you help me with an amendment, Jason, on how we could still consider a felony, but we could consider the circumstances surrounding it?
Jason Green, city attorney.
I think that you could add to that particular section, the very last sentence, the phrase, except upon the specific authorization of the Rapid City Common Council. And I think that would allow you to do that.
Okay. I think that would be a good amendment. I will offer that as an amendment to the motion on the floor.
Why don't we do this? We'll treat that as an amendment, and then we'll come back and vote on the amended motion if it so passes. Everyone clear on the amendment that is being proposed? Jason, why don't you explain it one more time, and can you give us reference to what the code number is?
Yes, this is to section 5.40.020. It begins on the bottom of page 1 and extends onto the top of page 2. To the last sentence of that section, you would add the phrase, except upon the specific authorization of the Rapid City Common Council. And that would be the proposed amendment as I understand it. And I think you've got a proposal. I don't know if you have a second or not, though.
Nope, I don't have a second yet. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the amendment only, please. Malcolm, did you want to talk about the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, just looking at this section that we're proposing this amendment, if this is already in place and this person already has a license, I mean, why would we make changes if a person already has a license and this has already been on the books?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
I can't speak to a current situation because I'm not familiar with any specific facts, but generally speaking, you might want to consider this if you wanted the flexibility to authorize someone who had a felony conviction to hold one of these licenses at some point in the future.
Okay.
Just a follow-up then. If we pass this as it is today with the changes that are being made, would we then go back and take away the license from those that already have license?
Jason Green, City Attorney.
Well, again, I can't speak to any specific situation, but it seems to me that there shouldn't be anyone who has a felony who has one of these licenses. If there is such a situation, I would think that that would be brought up when they go to renew the license, and they would have the opportunity to appeal any denial to the council at that point in time.
Okay. Alderman Chapman, you still have the floor, sir.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to continue this item until the next council meeting.
Okay. We have a substitute motion and a second to continue this item to the next council meeting. Is that correct? Okay. Very good. Any discussion on that motion? And we will be talking only to the motion to continue. Alderman Weifenbach, do you want to speak, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would have a tendency to support this amendment, and the reason would be, or support the continuation, obviously, so it doesn't shoot it down. My understanding on state law in South Dakota that a juvenile that has a felony charge can stick with them. In the state of South Dakota, we're in most of the other states, maybe 48 of them, that after that juvenile becomes an adult, that will drop off their record. So I would just hope that if we continue this, that maybe it would give our city attorney an opportunity to check that state statute and see if I'm correct. That way I would support this motion, because I believe that the state of South Dakota is harsh upon juveniles who have felony charges and trying to move into life and trying to correct a situation that may have arisen some time ago. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Since we're, and I'm in support of the continuation as well, but since it's being continued, there was some issues raised by Alderman Quaker about the GEMS and licensing those people, and I'd like to make sure that we're not hurting ourselves in a business perspective by requiring licenses or not requiring licenses for the gem dealers that could come to the Civic Center or elsewhere in Rapid City. Hate to lose the business here, so if we can tighten those rules up as well.
Okay. Motion on the floor is a continuation motion to the next council meeting. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. That item has been continued to our next council meeting. Item 42, please.
Item 42 is second reading of Ordinance 5455, ordinance to establish the process for approval of tax increment financing districts and project plans by adding Chapter 3.26 to the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Well, before we vote on this, let me just thank everyone that served on this committee. It was a long process that took us I believe it was about a year and a half, and I just want to thank everyone that served on that committee. I think this really brings what TIF's really needed, and that's transparency to the process. So thank you. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
You said it.
Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 43, please.
Item 43 is second reading of Ordinance 5456 regarding supplemental appropriation number 4 for 2008. The recommendation is to continue to the December 30 special council meeting, and that is my motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to continue this item to the special council meeting on December 30th, correct? Okay, any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 44, please.
Item 44 is second reading of ordinance 5457, an ordinance updating the fees for water service by amending Chapter 13.04 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I yield to the floor.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Quaker, did you want to speak to this? Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes with one no from Alderman Quaker. Item 45, please.
Item 45 is second reading of ordinance 5458, an ordinance updating the fees for sewer service by amending Chapter 13.8 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I yield to the floor.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Since we're now again looking at perhaps that TIF for that sewer line going from 5th and Catron to 16, I understand that's beginning to raise its head again. We're looking at using $2 million out of this funds to put that line in next year. And if the developers are going to be putting that in and using their money to spend and put the line in, do we need to raise the sewer rates as much as we need to? If the way I understand it, the way it was explained to me before, that we were $5 million short, and if we have a developer that's going to put in something that we were planning on putting in a year that's costing $2 million, do we need the 5, and can we just live with the 3? And if we can live with the 3 without taking on any more additional wants that we want to put in that's beyond what we've had planned, do we need to raise the sewer rates as much as we're anticipating?
I'm going to go to Robert Ellis. Robert, did you understand the question?
Yes, I did, and maybe to respond to that, if we're lucky enough and somebody steps forward and privately funds that and we do not need to use any money out of the enterprise fund, I know there's a number of other projects waiting in the wing, and just a couple that come to my mind. The Elkville lift station, someday that's going to need to be upgraded with all the development that's happening by Cabela's in that area. And then also David Lamb's property and connecting the lift station at Jolly Lane and connecting that over to the future Morningstar, which we'll be acting on here a little bit later on in the agenda. So there's a number of $1 million projects that come to mind rather quickly.
Very good. I guess just for clarification for everybody up in the dais and on the audience, if a TIF, and there is no TIF application in the process right now for Catron Boulevard, but if there is a TIF that comes forward and the council decides that they support it, the money would come back from the increment. It would not come back out of this enterprise fund. So it would not, if there's a TIF that eventually is approved for Catron Boulevard, it does not impact the rates at all, because the dollar amount, the funding that is that would come back to pay back that TIF would be through the increment in the property taxes. Is that a correct statement? I'll look at Marcia and Robert. I think Marcia, is that a fair statement?
Again, the discussions to date have been about that TIF being privately funded, so the enterprise fund would not be affected.
Okay, very good. Anything else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thanks for acknowledging me. If right now we're anticipating using our enterprise fund to put that sewer line in from 5th and Catron to 16. It's in the works in 2009 or 2010, the way it was explained to me. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so if we are going to take the money out of our enterprise funds, the $2 million out of our enterprise funds next year to put this sewer line in, as opposed to having a developer putting the sewer line in, that would save us the $2 million. Now, the argument that Robert Ellis is talking about is that there may be some additional projects that we can work on to use that $2 million. Well, the one of the Elkville, that's already part of a TIF, the way I understand it. That's part of the, so that's not part of the Cabela's TIF? The Elkville lift station on the north side of 90, that's the one you're talking about?
Let's go to Robert Ellis.
It is part of a TIF, but the city does have to upfront those monies. So the enterprise fund would have to come up with the initial investment, and the TIF would reimburse the enterprise fund for that.
That's true.
And we do run a fiscally constrained enterprise budget for sewer as well as water. So we're only doing the projects we can afford, but the need is greater than what we can afford. So if the Catron Boulevard sewer project does get funded privately, like I explained, there are a number of other projects that the development pressure is there today, the funding just isn't.
Yep.
Well, I'd like to see if that TIF would come forward and move that forward for the 5th and Catron to 16 before I would like to see raised the sewer rates as much as we're anticipating. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion passes, I believe, with 2 noes from Alderman Quaker and Alderman Okrepke. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to item 46 under growth management, and that'd be Mr. Kroger, I believe. Who read those in, or is that Sam?
Item number 46 is a request by Dream Design International for a preliminary plat located east of the intersection of Elkville Road and Old Folsom Road. I would move to deny at the applicant's request.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice at the applicant's request. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 47, please.
Item 47 is a request by Spurler Consulting Incorporated for Roy Burr for a preliminary plat located at 5617 Villaggio Lane. Move approval with stipulations.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Motion is for approval. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to the Legal and Finance Committee items number 48, and Alderman Sam Quaker.
Item 48 is confirmation of appointment of Barb Collins as a second alternate on the City Planning Commission. Move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just be abstaining from this. Barb is a relative.
She is a relative.
Second cousin.
Second cousin to your third cousin?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, we have a motion and a second to confirm the appointment of Barb Collins, second alternate on the Planning Commission. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes with Alderman LaCroix abstaining. Item number 49, please.
Item 49 is authorize staff to request proposals for a storage area network and virtualization hardware, software, and services. I yield to the floor.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like the record to reflect that I will be abstaining from this item as my employer provides these services.
Very good. Thank you. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes with Alderman Quaker abstaining. Item number 50, please.
Can I do 50 through 52 at the same time? Yes? Okay.
Go ahead.
Items 50 through 52 are authorizations for the mayor and finance officer to sign agreements between the city and OS Development, Inc. for the design, construction, and dedication of land for water reservoir and booster station, payment of oversized costs for public water mains, and payment of oversized costs for sanitary sewer mains. So yield to the floor.
Okay, can we have a motion, please?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval on items 50, 51, and 52. Discussion on that motion. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Let's go to bids and our city finance officer, Mr. Jim Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have 3 bid items on the agenda this evening. The first one is the downtown pavement repair. We received 4 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Trueform Construction Incorporated in an amount of $258,765.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval to accept the bid from Trueform Constructions for $258,765. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Next item is the North Glen Place drainage improvements. We received 9 bids as listed. Staff is recommending we reject all bids.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to reject all bids. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Why are we rejecting all the bids?
Mr. Preston.
Okay. We are rejecting all bids because this would bid on the understanding that the individual wanted the work done was going to grant easement for the work to be done. Mr. Ellis advises me that, or his staff, that they did go out for bids, they received the bids, and then the landowner decided not to grant the easements for them to do their work. And so we don't have a project.
Okay, go ahead.
Is this a project that the city needs to do? And if so, is there a process that the city can use to proceed, or?
Let's go to Mr. Ellis, Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe a little bit of background on this project. We were contacted by this property owner on North Glen Place. They had what I'd call a drainage problem. Water from the street, public water, was exiting the street, going across their property, causing some erosion and perhaps even some flooding of his home, if I remember correctly. And so we recognized that problem. We stepped up to try to correct it. Over the course of the design, we did need to get the easements because we had to channel that water around their house or across their property. And they seemed like they were receptive to this project moving forward. We, on the assumption that they were a proponent of the project, we requested bids, and we received very favorable bids. But the property owner had a change of heart, decided that they didn't want the city to do this project. I'm guessing that they're going to take it on their own. They did not want to sign the easement, so left us in really no other position but to reject the bids and allow the property owner to try to resolve the issue themselves.
Okay, Alderman Quaker, anything else?
I guess no choice at this point to support the rejecting of the bids, but I guess we've probably all learned a lesson that next time we make sure we have it in writing before we proceed. That this is the only person that's really would have benefited, right? Is the landowner? I'm confused. Maybe I'll figure it out later. Thanks.
Okay, motion on the floor is to reject all bids. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Preston.
The third item is the street rehab for the Harney Drive, Harney Place, and Raymond Drive. We received 3 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Hills Material Company in the amount of $155,847.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, that takes us to mayor's items. I did have one item, item 55A, which is Halley Park. I just wanted to publicly thank Deb Hadcock, our council president. Of all the projects that the city has done, I don't think I've ever received more compliments than the lighting of Halley Park. I bet we've had 2 or 3 dozen folks call the mayor's office, and I've had a number of folks stop me on the street and tell me what a wonderful project that was and how nice it looks that as you drive through the center of our community, that Halley Park is all lit up. So, and as always, when you give Deb a project, the rule of thumb is get out of the way because she'll run you over. And I'd just like to thank Deb for all of her hard work and I guess thank her for making sure I didn't fall off a ladder in Halley Park that Saturday. So thank you so much, and thank you, Deb, for your hard work on that. Yep. Okay, we also have item 56, which is a soccer task force request for the council to place a soccer land designation discussion on the December 30th, 2008 legal and finance agenda. And I believe that's Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The soccer task force has met a couple of times, and this comes forward from them. But looking at our end of the year calendar, I think they would be okay with moving that to the first legal and finance meeting in January, which I believe is January 14, 2009. So my motion would be to move it to that meeting.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to ask this to be placed on the legal and finance, the first legal and finance committee meeting, which is January 14th of the new year. Very good. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. If I remember right, 2 weeks ago that this was continued to either the first or second meeting in February, which is only a month later. And I'm just wondering what the goal is of putting this on the legal and finance agenda and what action the committee would be expected to take.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Sam, your memory is correct. The discussion of the item that we moved to February was the specific discussion of the Estes property. This is a more global approach. This is looking at just land overall. The committee has site selection criteria and is looking at a different property, not necessarily to say that that's where soccer should go, but to make sure that we've looked at every property that the city currently owns and then other large pieces of property as well. So this would be just an overall land discussion, not necessarily the Estes property.
Okay.
If I could just ask Alderman Chapman
Sure, go ahead.
a question. We all know that the city is taking, the council is taking the steps on appraising the balance of the Wally Byam site. If that's one of the sites that's being considered, we should probably have have a brief discussion on that tonight, because that process will be well underway by the time January, February rolls around. So I'm just curious if that site has popped up as one of the sites.
Okay. Malcolm, if you'd answer that, we're going to reel the conversation in here, but go ahead.
That was one of the sites that the selection committee looked at 2 years ago. So that is still on the number of sites that the committee looked at. Not specifically looking at that. The soccer community would like for the council to just start having a land discussion in global terms, simply because they feel that they cannot move forward without some resolution to land.
Yep, thank you. Motion on the floor is to place this on the first Legal and Finance Committee meeting of January, which is January 14th. Any further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 56A, I had Alderman Karen Olson and Will Collins.
The golf community is very proud of the accomplishments of young Will Collins, who has just received his PGA card. This is a young man who's worked hard, who's been worked on the public courts or the public links in order to achieve this very important level of success. And our golfing community throughout Rapid City and the Black Hills are very proud of Will.
Very good. Congratulations to him. 56A, I had Deb Hadcock, and I had something about chili. Potluck?
It's
Okay.
chilly outside, but I'd like to thank everybody this year that participated in our potluck. It was a good camaraderie between council members, mayor, and staff. We appreciate everybody that attended. And we would also, as city council, and hopefully speaking for the city council and the mayor, wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and a Happy New Year. So, thank you.
Thank you. And the food was great. We also have 56C. I had beautification and Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. There's some exciting things happening with what's happening with the Destination Rapid City and some of the efforts that the Beautification Committee is doing. And right now, like I said, there was some exciting things. There's a lot of happening. They're moving forward with a lot of good projects. And what I'm hoping for is that maybe there's other people that would like to join in and help support this Beautification Committee. We're looking for some other people to fill some seats and to replace some people. And so if anybody's interested in being part of the Beautification Committee, it would certainly be a welcome to join us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I believe that we sent out a press release, I believe, this last week, and I think there's 3 different positions. Is that correct, Mr. Okrepke? I think there's 3 open positions. The current terms expire at the end of this year, so anyone who is interested in the beautification of Rapid City is certainly encouraged to contact the mayor's office, fill out a citizen's interest form either in the office or online, and we'll be making that appointment shortly after the first of the year. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to item number 57, please. And Alderman Quaker, could you please read that in?
Item 57 is a sign code Board of Appeals from Don Rice from Aggressive Auto, and I yield. The recommendation is to continue to January 19, and that is my motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this item to the January 19th, 2009 City Council meeting. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson. Just a reminder, the motion is for continuation.
I'm just asking why this item is being continued.
Okay, let's go to Marcia Elkins, Growth Manager.
There are letters of notification that need to be sent out as part of the legal process, and that had not occurred.
Okay.
Because the Sign Code Board of Appeals has already looked at this.
Let's go back to Marcia Elkins.
Thank you. Under the ordinance that you've adopted, before this item comes to City Council, the owner is also required to notify the adjacent property owners once again of this hearing before the City Council, and it's our information that that has not occurred to date. So before you can have your public hearing and consider this appeal, that notification has to occur. That's the reason for the continuation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Reminder, motion on the floor is to continue this item. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a point of clarification, this did not go to the Sign Code Board of Appeals.
I believe it did.
It
Marcia?
did.
I believe the process, and Marcia's probably going to tell us, that it went to the Sign Code of Appeals, they denied it, and therefore it is being appealed to the City Council.
Correct. The applicant did not appear at that hearing, but it was denied at that time.
If we could, thank you, Mayor. If we just make sure the minutes for that meeting
Are linked, absolutely. Marcia, make sure that happens. Thank you. Motion on the floor is to continue this item to the January 19th, 2009 City Council meeting. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to the public hearings, items 58 through 105, and the chair would look for a motion to open the public hearing for items 58 through 105 inclusive.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This is a continued public hearing consent item, item 58 through 71 inclusive. Chair would ask if any items 58 through 71 need to be pulled from the continued consent calendar. Item 62. Any others? Please turn on your light. Any others? If not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the continued public hearing consent items, items 58 through 71 inclusive, with the exception of 62, please.
Move for approval.
Second.
I was wondering. Sort of a lull. I know it's cold out, but. Okay. The motion on the floor is to approve the consent calendar 58 through 71 inclusive, with the exception of item 62. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 62, Alderman Kroger, please.
Item number 62 is a request by Dream Design International Incorporated for Robert Sunby for a preliminary plat located at 5755 Sheridan Lake Road. I would move approval with stipulations.
Second.
A motion and a second for approval of stipulations. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The neighbors that are adjacent to this property have been concerned about possible drainage issues, and I just wanted to be sure that the stipulation that it describes it as stormwater management and so forth, and I just want to make sure that their concerns will have been addressed in terms of runoff and other drainage issues.
Okay. Marcia? And this motion on the floor is for approval of the preliminary plat. Yes. Anything else, Alderman Olson? Okay. And Marcia, you're going to give us your spiel on this or not?
Continued calendar was on to be acted on tonight with stipulations.
Okay.
And it was presented that way if you looked at the link.
Okay, very good. So this was our side, not his. Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to the end of our continued public hearing consent items. Chair will look for a motion to close the public hearings on items 58 through 105, please.
So move.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on items 58 through 105. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to the consent public hearing items 72 through 87. 72 through 87. Chair would ask if any of those items need to be removed from the consent public hearing item agenda. So we're dealing with 72 through 87. Any items need to be removed? 72 through 87. Please turn on your light.
Move for approval.
Okay, seeing none, I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent public hearing items, items 72 through 87. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That does take us to the end of the consent public hearing calendar. We're on to the non-consent public hearing items, items 88 through 105, and item 88, and Alderman Ron Kroger.
Item number 88 is a request by Dream Design International Incorporated for amendment to the adopted comprehensive plan to change the future land use designation from a planned residential development with one dwelling unit per acre to general commercial with a planned commercial development located at 1700 Catron Boulevard. I would move approval with a new legal description.
Marcia?
Yes, the Planning Commission's recommended approval of it with a revised legal description, and that's the document that's attached.
Okay, that's my motion, Mayor.
Is that with stipulations also?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations with revised legal. Jason, does that make sense? Are we okay? Okay. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item, I believe, was discussed in future land use, and is the revised land description reflective of that conversation in dividing that piece of property between commercial and residential?
Marcia?
Yes, that is why the legal description's been revised and a smaller area is recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you very much. In which case, then, the Future Land Use Committee supported this as well.
Okay, very good. The motion on the floor is approval of stipulations with revised legal. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 89, please.
89 is a request by Dream Design International Incorporated for amendment to the adopted comprehensive plan to change the future land use designation from planned residential development with one dwelling unit per acre to general commercial with a planned commercial development located north of Catron Boulevard and east of US Highway 16. I would move to deny without prejudice.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 90, please.
Item number 90 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest a future assessment for the installation of sewer and additional pavement along Doolittle Street and additional pavement along Midway Street located at 1323 Midway Street. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
In look at this, I was concerned about sidewalks and what the situation in regard to sidewalks might be as this project moves forward.
Marcia?
If I understand, item 90 is just the waiver of right to protest for the pavement, and the sidewalks are required to be installed under the next item, preliminary plat. They would be required at the time that a building permit was issued for the property.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 91, please.
Item number 91 is a request by the Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity for a variance to the subdivision regulations to waive the requirement to install sewer and additional pavement as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code located at 1323 Midway Street. I would move approval with stipulations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 92, please.
Item number 92 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest a future assessment for the installation of sewer along a portion of 5th Street and Elk Street as they abut vacated 3rd Street right-of-way located southeast of the intersection of 5th Street and Fairmont Boulevard. I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 93, please.
Item number 93 is a request by Renner and Associates for Vern Osterloo for the variance to the subdivision regulations to waive the requirement to install sewer along a portion of 5th Street and Elk Street and to install sidewalk along 3rd Street as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code located southeast of the intersection of Fifth Street and Fairmont Boulevard. I would move to deny in part and improve in part with stipulations in accordance with the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve in part with stipulations and deny in part per Planning Commission's recommendations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 94, please.
Item number 94 is a request by Renner and Associates for Vern Osterloo for a preliminary plat on Track H and I of Regional Hospital Addition located southeast of the intersection of Fifth Street and Fairmont Boulevard. I would move approval with stipulations.
We have a motion and a second to approve item number 94 with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 95, please.
Item number 95 is a request by Fisk Land Surveying Consulting Engineers for Thomas P. Walsh Sr. Family Ltd. Partnership for a variance to subdivision regulations to reduce the minimum access easement width from 59 feet to 24 feet, to reduce the paved surface requirements from 26 feet to 24 feet, and to waive the requirement to install curb, gutter, sidewalk, streetlight conduit, water, and sewer along the access easements as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, located at 725, 719, and 711 Jackson Boulevard. I would move approval with stipulations.
We have a motion and second for approval with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 96, please.
Item number 96 is a request by Arleth and Associates for a preliminary plat located at 719 Jackson Boulevard. I would move approval with stipulations.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 97, please.
Mayor, I turn these over to Alderman Quaker.
Quaker. Legal and Finance Chair, Alderman Sam Quaker.
Item number 97 is second reading of ordinance 5416, ordinance amending 17.06 of Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code for a rezoning within the described property is requested by Kent and Karen Haag for rezoning from low-density residential district to general ag district in the area located east of Katrin Boulevard and northwest and south of Wellington Drive, and I move approval. I'm sorry, I move denial without prejudice per recommendation.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 98, please.
Item 98 is second reading of ordinance 5445 as requested by Sperlich Consulting, Inc. for Roy Burr for rezoning from general ag district to low-density residential district located north of Katrin and west of Golden Eagle Drive. I move approval with stipulations.
Second.
A motion and a second for approval of stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 99, please.
Item 99 is second reading of ordinance 5446, an ordinance amending 17.06 of Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code for a rezoning requested by the City of Rapid City for a rezoning from Park Forest District to Flood Hazard District located west of Chapel Lane and south of Jackson Boulevard, and I move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Marcia?
That these items that are appearing that are on behalf of the city are the implementation of the recommendations that came out of the floodplain task force this summer. So I wanted you to be aware that we were moving forward with those.
Very good. Motion on the floor, item number 99 is for approval. Any further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 100, please.
Item 100 is second reading of ordinance 5447, ordinance amending 17.06 of Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code for a rezoning for the within described property requested by the city from low-density residential district to flood hazard district located at 2917 Chapel Lane. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 101, please.
Item 101 is second reading of ordinance 5448, requested by City of Rapid City for a rezoning from no-use district to light industrial district located west of Elkvale Road, north of Seeger Drive, and east of Dias Avenue. Move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 102, please.
Item 102, second reading of ordinance 5449, an ordinance amending 17.06 of Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code for rezoning within the described property as requested by the city for rezoning from no-use district to general ag district located north of I-90, west of Elkvale Road, and east of Dias Avenue, and I move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 102. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 103, please.
Item 103 is second reading of ordinance 5450, and an ordinance amending 17.06 of Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code for rezoning from low-density residential to general commercial district in the Needles subdivision located at 1700 Catron Boulevard. A recommendation is to approve with stipulations, and that is my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Marcia, why is it going from low-density residential to general commercial across from low-density?
Marcia?
This is the item that we spoke about briefly, where the Associated Comprehensive Plan was also approved for revised description. This stipulation of approval does recommend that this be approved for revised, again, description. The location of the approach across from the property is identified, and there's a limited area around that would be identified for general commercial designation. The property on the corner is anticipated to be general commercial. Because this would be the approach that has been approved by the Department of Transportation, the Future Land Use Committee felt that it was appropriate to have some commercial on each side of that, a node. But that was restricted, and this area at the very corner, the very eastern end of it, has been removed from the description as per the stipulations. You'll see a subsequent item that was to also rezone the adjacent property. That has been denied without prejudice because the committee again felt it was not appropriate to extend that much further. Again, looking for the connection point at Catron and the connection where the street would line up in a limited area, a node, if you would, of commercial development.
Okay.
I guess what I would be looking for is a planned commercial development being across from low-density residential.
And I asked the very same question. Marcia, go ahead.
That has already been approved and is a record. That was one of the stipulations.
Okay, thank you, dear.
Good question, though. Okay, motion on the floor is for approval with stipulations. Any further discussion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. St. Patrick LLC, I'm not familiar with who that is. Can you let me know?
Marcia?
It's a string of people, but the real owner of it is Doyle Estes and Partners.
So this will be a planned development designation.
Correct. That's already been approved, contingent on the zoning being approved as well.
And letters were sent to the neighbors, and how many letters were sent to the folks in Wellington Drive? Do we know if any of them fit the notice requirements?
Marcia?
I couldn't tell you without checking the file.
Don't know.
Do we know what the plan is for that site?
Marcia?
There's no specific development plan for that property. There's been some discussions in the past, but as I understand it, there is no plan at this point in time. I would make you aware of that one of our staff lives in the Edinburgh South Hill area and was quite an advocate for reducing the size of that area to just a small node. That's one of the reasons the recommendation came forward out of the Future Land Use Committee for a smaller area. So I think that concern and the concerns of the neighborhood have been well represented.
Yep. Anything else, Alderman Quaker?
I just want to make sure that this doesn't catch the neighborhood off guard.
Marcia?
Again, based on the notice, just looking at the map, my guess is that there would only have been a few, if any, of the property owners across the street that would have been notified. With the 250 feet, it would be a small number of people. Again, if you'd like to delay this to later in the agenda, I can pull the file and see how many folks were notified.
Yep. Okay. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
If I could, if I could make one.
What,
if I
one
could
more.
Finish my.
Go ahead.
I would like to withdraw my motion to approve, if the seconder will allow me to, and offer a new motion to continue this to the end of the agenda to get that information.
Okay, I'm going to go to the seconder. Who was the seconder?
I think I was.
Okay, I'm gonna go to a point of order here. Mr. Green.
Mayor, the usual procedure would be to ask if there's objection to the
Right.
withdrawal. If
Because-
there's objection, then you should vote on the request to withdraw.
Right. Because the motion at this time actually belongs to the body as a whole, not to the
Correct.
motion maker. Okay, is there any objections to withdrawing the motion? Any objection? If so, please turn on your light. Okay, Karen, did you want to talk to that, or?
No.
Okay, so there's no objection to that, so we're back to no motion. So there's no motion on the floor. Chair would look for a motion, please. Karen, did you want to offer a motion?
I would offer the motion that this be continued to the end of the meeting.
Okay. Motion and a second to continue this item to the end of the agenda, so it'll actually come after 105. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 104, please.
Item 104 is second reading of ordinance 5451, an ordinance amending 17.06 of Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code for rezoning from low-density residential district to general commercial district located north of Catron Boulevard and east of U.S. Highway 16. The recommendation is to deny without prejudice, and that is my motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Karen, did you have a comment? Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you. This is really a part of the same discussion that Future Land Use was trying to make sure that the property owners in Edinburgh were properly protected, and that the safety issues that might be in existence because of the connection that was going to occur to the Southwest Connector. And in the discussion, I think the committee was satisfied that those things have been met by this offer and this particular proposal.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor is to deny without prejudice. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're back to 103, please. Did we have a motion for discussion, please? Nope, didn't we just do 105? I'm sorry, let's go 105. I missed that, didn't I? 105, please, and then we'll go back to 103.
Item 105 is second reading of ordinance 5459, ordinance amending section 17.06 of Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code for request by FMG Inc. for Bypass LLC for a rezoning from General Ag District to Light Industrial District located at 2620 and 2621 Reardon Court. The recommendation is to approve, and that is my motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Back to 103 now, please.
Item 103 is second reading of ordinance 5450, an ordinance amending 17.06 of Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code, requested by Dream Design International Inc. for rezoning from low-density residential district to general commercial district located at 1700 Catron Boulevard, and yield to the floor.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Marcia. Go ahead.
To address the question that was raised, this is a map that shows those properties owners that were notified. Again, you can see the area that was removed from this rezoning and the comp plan amendment that's related. That is remaining as it is currently zoned. It would not be commercial. And again, the red line indicates those property owners that were sent certified notices, including the residences across the street in this area right here. So that is the 250-foot notification boundary and who was required to be notified by ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. And in light of finding out who the property owners are, I'll be abstaining from this. One of the property owners is one of 5 owners that my wife works for. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll still note that. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you. Excuse me. It's helpful to understand that the property that is on the north and east side of the Southeast Connector is a commercial property, if I'm not mistaken, and that entered into the discussion as well, so that there were the realization that there were other adjoining commercial properties. It's also important to note that on those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 property owners that are on the curve, all of those, that is the backyard of those property owners too. So there was a general discussion that there has been sufficient interest in protecting and buffering those residential property owners.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes with Alderman LaCroix abstaining. Okay, very good. That takes us to Mr. Preston and the bill list.
Thank you, Mayor. Your bill list totals $6,408,081.35. I'd like to add one item as Hills Materials for the East St. Joseph Street turn lane, change order number 1 final for an amount of $343.92. Makes a new total of $6,409,235.27. I would like to ask the council to approve the bill list and authorize the finance office to prepare a treasurer check in an amount of $168,040 payable to Pennington Title Company. This is for the Lukens property, which is the location of the Jackson Sprague treatment plant.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the bill list as amended. The bill total is $6,409,235.27, and to also direct the city finance office to issue a treasurer's check to Pennington County for $168,040 for the purchase of property for the water treatment plant.
Yes, sir.
Okay, discussion on that motion. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Just a minor clarification, the check will be issued to Pennington Title, not to Pennington County.
Okay, very good. They would have liked that, wouldn't they? Okay, everyone clear on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Green, do we have an executive session?
We do, and I would appreciate it if the motion maker would include that the purposes for those allowed by SDCL 1-25-2.
We have a motion and a second to go in executive session as permitted under SDCL 1-25-2. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're in executive session. Thank you, everyone.
Mayor, I'd ask the council to direct the city attorney to proceed in accordance with the discussions in executive session in the contract negotiation matter.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you.